So we're joined all the way from the shores of Lake Michigan in Chicago, Illinois, by my friend Kesha Jontae, CPA, Millennial Tax Expert. We thank you so much for joining us. I've got a room full here with me at Velma Jackson High School. We're in the Financial Services Career Cluster. And we're recording this for all of our friends in Madison County Schools, Madison Central High School, Rosa Scott, Ridgeland High School, Germantown High School, the Academic Options Center, and also our personal finance classes. My good friend, Coach Robin Mercer, over there at Madison Central, and our YouTube channel. So thank you so much for taking some time for us today.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. I'm always excited to talk to the youth and try to sway them over to my side of the world. So,
Well, because finance jobs are not going anywhere. It will literally be here when they'll be here as long as the roaches will be here after the
Mhm.
destruction of the earth. And we'll get into
Exactly.
all that. But just give us a little background. You know, you're originally from Chicago, which I didn't know till just a few seconds ago. But you went to school in Atlanta at
Mhm.
Georgia State University and at Kennesaw State University, and you got your degrees in finance and became a CPA.
Yeah, so I actually have two bachelor's degrees. My first bachelor's degree is in accounting from Georgia State University. And then I went to Kennesaw State University for a master's of accounting with a tax concentration. And then afterwards, I took a couple more classes to get my finance degree from Georgia State University. So I have two bachelors in business
Wow.
administration from Georgia State, one in accounting, one in finance, a master's degree in taxation. I've been kind of noodling on the idea of going back for a doctorate in accounting as well. Because, I like school. School is cool. Stay in school, kids. Um, but yeah, so and then after my all of my schooling, I did the necessary tests and work to become licensed as a CPA. And I'm also licensed as an enrolled agent by the United States Treasury. So enrolled agents are more specific or more focused on taxation and tax law. And that's where the majority of my work is. I mostly work in the tax industry. So I have two licenses related to my field.
That's awesome. And we've had a few alums in recent years become accounting majors at some of our great institutions here. Ole Miss up in Oxford, great accounting program. Jackson State, HBCU here in Jackson, great accounting program. And then we have another one over at Belhaven University, a private school, also majoring in accounting. So it is a very uh, secure field, and it's a field that is always seeing advancement because with technological advances, there's more and more AI to assist accountants. There's more and more things that are being bought and things that money accounts that had to be managed. So uh, we'll get into why somebody needs an accountant, but I want to talk about this field for a while because I just think I don't think kids understand that literally every single business, whether they are a small business with one person or whether they are Walmart, they have some type of accountant, some type of financial people. Some of these people have multiple degrees like yourself, but you can also get into this field with just an associate's or just a, a certificate in accounting science. So just talk about how secure and how diverse this career field is because it is, like we said, it is literally going nowhere.
Yeah. So the accountant, just like you said, the accounting field is it's not going anywhere. It's one of the oldest professions in the world, actually. Um, and so we're actually kind of in a crisis where we don't have enough people in the accounting programs in schools coming out of accounting that we can hire. Right now, I'm looking for somebody in my job right now to work with. So definitely encouraging people to go into the field. It's very secure. Like you said, there's every single business needs at least one accountant, whether they think they do or not. But there's so many different areas even in the accounting field that you can go into. So it doesn't necessarily just have to be like, oh, I'm, doing the books or crunching the numbers. I don't know if you guys seen the chit show on YouTube or TikTok, but it doesn't necessarily just have to be about doing budgets and stuff. I'm in the tax industry. Not all accountants are in tax. A
Yeah.
lot of accountants don't want anything to do with tax. They don't know anything about tax. It's a bit different from your traditional accountants. And then you have people that go into governmental accounting. So they're really working on the governments, and that's a whole different animal. You have people that are auditors So they're making sure that the companies are telling the truth with the numbers that they're putting on the books. And then they have just the regular financial accountants that are the ones that are putting the numbers on the book. So there's so many different areas and avenues that you can go into in the accounting field. It's extremely diverse. And like I said, there's the levels to the education that you need. If you're just working with a mom and pop, doing their bookkeeping, then maybe you can just learn about bookkeeping and, like you said, have kind of a certificate and work with them. But if you want to work with the big companies, then you will need the advanced education, the degrees, the licenses. You can't become a CPA without getting the education. So if you're looking to get certified or not certified, but if you're looking to get licensed in the field, then you will need that education. But if you're just like, I just want to help out the small mom and pops and make sure their books are right and they don't really have a lot going on, and I just want to make sure I'm tracking all the transactions, then you don't necessarily have to have the license or the education, although I do highly encourage you to have some kind of education in the field because it is also very easy to mess up.
Oh, absolutely. And the cool thing is this is also a field you can get into where you can have a little side hustles doing things for the small businesses. I know several accountants, they work for a a large company doing their books, but then the movie theater calls them and says, "Hey, can you come every other week, spend here about 4 hours and work on this stuff?" And they get paid pretty well. So it can be a good little side hustle doing the smaller businesses as well.
Yeah, it can be a side hustle to your main thing. I'm one of those people that I've worked in, like I've had a job working for corporations. I work in corporate tax for the last 12 to 15 years, but I've also been doing my own thing and working with small businesses and even individuals doing their taxes on the side as well. It could be something small where you're just kind of supplementing your income, or you can turn it into your own 6 or 7 figure business. I know people who are doing this on, they're not working for a business, they're doing it on their own, and they make a lot of money doing it because, again, every business needs it.
Yeah, and I got to connect you with another friend of this class, my good friend Kendra Dancy in New York, who she is an accountant, and literally she is an entrepreneur that's an accountant. She
Mhm.
works with other entrepreneurs that instead of hiring a person full time, they use an accountant. They use her on a contract basis. She goes in, she handles all their books, she gives them some strategies on how they're handling their money, and she spends just a few hours a week with all of them. They're not having millions and millions of employees. They maybe have 5 or 10, and that is a great way to be an entrepreneur because I think a lot of kids say, "Well, I think it would be secure to be an accountant, but I want to work for myself." Well, this is a
Mhm.
field where you can do that.
Exactly, exactly. And I know people, I mean, in the entrepreneurship of it can look different, right? So you could be like, again, I just want to be a tax person and I only want to do taxes this time of year. And so you can set your business up to where you do most of your work during tax season, the first 3.5 months of the year, and then you're not, I don't want to say coasting, but you're not necessarily working as hard for the rest of the year. And you can set it up to where you make, decent money in that time frame. You can do it just like your friend where you're not necessarily running your own business, but you are working as an outsourced accountant or a contract accountant. So you pick up contracts here and there when you want to work. You say, you know what, I only want to work, during the school year when my kids are in school, but I want to take the summer off so I can, spend time with them and go on vacation, where I'm just going to pick up contracts that are only going to last this long. And you have the negotiating power because, again, the companies need you to be able to set your rate so that when you're working, you're making the money that you need to make during the year. So it's very flexible, but again, something that every business really, really needs. Um, and it's like you said, it's always going to be here. It's always going to be here.
Yeah, and accounting degrees can put you in so many great areas. Especially banking. I had a banker yesterday, and he said, "Look, if you get a degree a degree in accounting, a bank somewhere is going to be able to use you doing some things in the bank."
Exactly. And not just necessarily just like in different industries, but even going up in the business, right? Like your career trajectory. Because accounting is something that is so fundamental to the business to make sure that you understand where your business is going, not just operationally, but financially to make sure that, okay, we have all these big plans and these big ideas to build the business and grow the business, but we also have to make sure we have the money to fund the business. Then having that education, that mindset of, I know the numbers. I know how to interpret the numbers. I know what the numbers say. I know what needs to be done to be able to understand that, yes, we do have money here, or no, we don't have the money. So we need to figure all this out on this side before we do these things, that is going to put you ahead of people that don't have that background. Even if you don't want to be an accountant, there's so many people that go and get accounting degrees and they start out in accounting and they're like, you know what? This is not really for me, friend. And so they go on into a different aspect, but that accounting background helps them out in those other areas as well.
Oh, big time. Now, obviously, we talked about people that maybe want to be an accountant or, they want to work in finance. But even if you don't, this is somebody you're going to probably have to deal with. And I know you have tons of clients. You're a tax expert. There are
Yeah.
so many different, and the joke is always there's two things that are guaranteed in life, death and taxes.
Mhm.
So, I know these kids are in high school. They may say, well, I'm not worried about that yet. Well, if you ever plan on having this life that you see on social media, where you're living large, you're going to have some tax professionals come in. If you ever plan on owning your own business of any sort, you're going to have to deal with an accountant. If you want to have kids, if there's anything like, I don't know all the laws in different states, but if you inherit something, if something's given to you, there's taxes involved in all that. So what are the main things that you see when people are paying taxes that they don't have any idea about, and it can wind up costing them even more money?
I think the biggest thing is that, like you said, taxes touches pretty much every single one of our taxes touch everything in our life, right? Taxes touch what happens when you buy a house. Taxes touch, what happens if you get married, if you have, if you get a divorce, if you have kids, if a spouse passes, or somebody else passes. There's so many different areas in our lives that taxes touch. So I think the biggest issue that I see when I talk to people, whether they're business owners or not, is that nobody's thinking about the tax impact. And so the biggest takeaway that I would have is that always think about how is this going to what is this going to do to my taxes? And if you don't know the answer to that, because most people don't, then make sure that you reach out to consult with a tax professional. Say, you know what, I'm getting married on December 31st at 11:59 p.m. How is that going to impact my taxes? Somebody say, well, if you get married on December 31st at 11:59 p.m., you're considered married for the whole year. And a lot of people are like, oh, well, that's good because that gives me benefits for marriage. But sometimes it doesn't, right? So it's good to be able to have that knowledge and going into it so that you understand how to plan correctly. I'm going to have a baby. What happens if I have the baby on this date versus this date? What happens, what benefits do I get, or how much extra money am I going to have to pay if I have this child in this state? What if I want to do this on my job as far as benefits go? Like, how does this impact? There's so many different things. I want to take money out of my 401k. I'm going to tell you not to do that, okay? Because for taxes, that's going to be a real bad, or it's going to give you a bad answer, right? So there's so many areas of our lives that tax touch that people don't even think about until they get into my seat and they sit across from me at tax time and I have to tell them, oh, okay, well, because you did this, this, and this, or because this, and this happened, this is how much you owe at the end of the year, or this is your refund is smaller than you expect it to be. And they're like, how? I don't understand. Like, because all these things that you did have a tax impact and we weren't prepared for that.
Yeah, and I think it's important too because uh, you know kids just think, well, I'm going to get my W-2 and then I'm going to ball out. Well, how you fill out that W-4 when you start the job and whether or not you actually are working for somebody or working for yourself is going to depend on you even getting the W-2. Some people get a 1099 and they don't even understand that, oh, I'm not going to get anything back. I have to feel, so there's a lot of things you have to understand, and that's why it's encouraged to seek a tax professional. And look, I'll be the first to admit for decades in rural communities, especially in rural black communities, there wasn't a lot of trust in financial professionals for a lot of good reasons. But, people like yourself, it's becoming a more diverse industry. There's more women, there's more people of color in this industry. So you can really find people you can trust and they can help you with that because the IRS is the ultimate equalizer. They don't give a crap what you look like or who you are. They're going to get their money
Mhm.
somehow or another.
Exactly. And yeah, that's exactly right. You have to understand your tax situation at the end of the day. You have to understand, are you a W-2 employee? Not only are you a W-2 employee, but do you have enough tax taken out? Because it's not, a lot of people feel like the employer is responsible for withholding the right amount of tax, but they're not. You are responsible for paying the right amount of tax on your income. The employer is just the person that takes the money and gives it to the IRS. So if you fill out the W-4 incorrectly, then that's not on the employer, that's on you. So when you file a return and you say, oh, you owe 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, I've even seen $100,000 in tax owed, then that's, you have to come up with it. Yes, I've seen that. And it was,
Mhm.
I got that same reaction when I told the person, you owe $100,000 in tax, and I don't have that money. Well, and their first thing was like, well, wasn't my employer supposed to make sure? No, you were supposed to make sure. So it's important to not just necessarily blindly trust, like, oh, my employer is doing it. I've seen situations where the W-4 was filled out correctly, but when the employer, the payroll department put it into the system, they put it in wrong. And so all year taxes weren't being taken out as they should have been, and nobody caught it until the tax return was done. And again, at the end of the day, it's your responsibility to make sure that it's withheld, that it's being withheld properly. And then, like, just like you said, I've had so many people, especially young people, in situations where they're working and they believe that they're W-2 employees, but then they get 1099, and a 1099 is basically a form that just says this is how much money I paid you, but I didn't pay you as an employee. I paid you as a contractor. So therefore you're considered to be self-employed. So now you have to pay not only income tax, but you have to pay self-employment tax, which is another 15% on top of whatever other income you have. And then maybe you don't have expenses because you were just working from home on your computer, and so this ends up being a lot of money. And so really understanding, like, having that conversation with your employer, okay, how am I getting paid? Am I going to get a W-2 at the end of the year? Am I going to get a 1099? Checking the pay stub if you're getting a W-2, checking the pay stub to make sure taxes are being taken out of your paycheck correctly. There's you can talk to a tax accountant to kind of help with that calculation. There's a calculator on the IRS website just to make sure that this money is being taken out at the end of the year, or excuse me, at the on your paycheck, so that at the end of the year you're not getting a big surprise. If you're RW, or excuse me, if you are a 1099, then how do you need to set up your payments being made to the IRS directly every quarter to make sure that you're not getting a big bill at the end of the year? And also understanding that a refund is not a requirement. You're not, it's
Yeah.
actually, if you're getting a refund and you don't have children, and you make decent money, then that just means that you've given the IRS your money during the year. So really the goal is to break even. The goal is to get as close to zero as possible. So don't expect a huge refund at the end of the year unless you just given, if you're getting a $4,000 refund, that means you gave the IRS $4,000 too much, unless you qualify for like all kinds of credits and stuff. But don't get upset at us when we tell you that your refund is $2. I've seen refunds like that, $2. That's good. That means you kept your money all through the years. It's Don't be mad at me. I'm just a messenger. But just understand those things. Like, understand your tax situation, understand how you having children, you being a homeowner, you being married impacts, because it's not going to be the same as the next person in the same situation. So just because this person over here gets a $10,000 refund because they have kids, doesn't mean that you're going to get a $10,000 refund because you have kids, because you have vastly different incomes, right? If you're 1099 or self-employed, then make sure that you are keeping track of all your income, keeping track of all of your deductions, paying taxes quarterly to the IRS, consulting with a tax professional so we can help you make that decision.
Yeah, and you mentioned about every tax situation isn't the same. People aren't using vehicles the same.
Mhm.
If people are able to write off a lot of miles, they're going to get a lot of money back. And I'm not even
Right.
an expert and I know that. So I
Yes.
think I think, but that's another big problem with social media. They see, oh, that person's balling out. I'm gonna go ball out too. Well,
Mhm.
they just because it looks like that doesn't mean it's the same on paper. Because if it's not on that paper, it doesn't exist.
Yeah, and a lot of things on social media is not necessarily true. A lot of people are just saying stuff to kind of like, for the sensationalization of it all. Like, oh, clickbait. I'm gonna say this crazy thing so this person can watch my video and I can get paid from the video. But it's not always true. A lot of us are trying to combat that on social media right now. But also remember, just like I said before, just because they can do it doesn't mean it's going to work for you, because you may have different tax situations. Like, their big thing right now is always go buy a G-Wagon. Well, some people, it might make sense for them to go buy a G-Wagon, but if you're not making, a couple $100,000 in your business, you're only making $70,000, $80,000, probably doesn't make sense for you to go buy a G-Wagon, right? So Don't just take advice from just anybody. If you're going to take advice from anybody, it should be an experienced professional that you actually trust and understands your situation.
Yeah. Now, before I get to their questions, just talk about because we said, I hear it all the time. I hear kids say they want to be an entrepreneur. I want to work for myself. I want to set my own hours, and that's great. We support these kids having the business ideas because it really is part of our economic system to be an entrepreneur. But how foolish is it to try to get into business for yourself without ever consulting with anybody that's an accountant?
I think that I don't necessarily want to say it's foolish just because it's just something that a lot of people just are not aware of needing that they should do. But it's definitely it would definitely be a smart thing to not only consult an accountant, but also an attorney. I'm gonna go ahead and throw a bone out to my attorney friends, just so you can understand like how your business should be set up for tax purposes, how your business setup is going to impact your taxes, how you can make sure that you're understanding your revenues and your expenses and how to read the numbers and understand, how much money you have at the end of the day, because cash in your bank account does not equal profit. Right. So some people will say, I don't have any money in my bank account. That means I'm at a loss. You could have $100,000 profit. You could have $1 million profit that you have to pay taxes on and have zero cash in the bank. So understanding that those concepts is really important when you're starting a business. But even if you don't do it like right at the beginning, it should be something that you do very early on so that you can know what's going on with your numbers. One thing that I've seen a lot of from a lot of individuals, a lot of entrepreneurs is that they don't know the numbers, they don't understand what's going on, they don't know how much money they're making at all. Like at any given point, they can't tell you how much money they made. They usually don't know how much money they made until their tax return is completed. And they're like, I made that much money all year. And I don't know where that money went, right? And it makes it difficult for them to make decisions that's going to help grow their business. So if you want to be in business for a long time, you want to have that longevity, you have to understand the numbers. And that's why I said that accounting is so fundamental to business. You have to understand those numbers. So consult with the tax accountant, consult with the regular accountant, consult with with an attorney to make sure your contracts and stuff are set up. I think those are the big three.
Absolutely. And it's just uh, not being knowledgeable of the tax code doesn't excuse you from not being accountable on the
Exactly.
tax code. Well, I do have some questions from the students, and these are really good. And this first one, she has two questions, but this is Landria Wilder. She's a senior, our student council president, member of our volleyball team. We're getting ready to go to her goal is to go to the Mississippi University for Women up in Columbus and be a nurse. But she asked, as a woman in this field, are there any positive or negative experience you've had, and what did you learn from it?
Um, I will say this. I'm sure that there are some women that have had more negative experiences than I have. I've been very lucky in my career to work with men and women that really care about the people that they work with and or the people that work for them and are very encouraging and wanting to make sure that you are growing. I've heard a lot of stories from other people about other women about how they're treated in the workplace because they're women, other Black women how they're treated in the workplace because they're Black. And I will say that I've been very lucky and fortunate and blessed that that has not been my experience. Um, so I, again, all of my experiences, well, I'm not gonna say all of, we all have our ups and downs. We all have our days, right? But I can't say that I haven't had any negative experiences because I am a woman, or because that I'm Black the people for the people that I've worked with. Now, on the outside, like when I'm working on my side stuff, I've had some experiences from people. I got into the industry very young, so I've had people that, want to talk to me crazy because I'm 20, 21, 22 years old in the industry and they think I'm a little kid and they, I don't know anything. I've had situations with other colleagues that, who have talked negatively to me because of the way that I look and they assume certain things about me and just like I don't know who you think I am, but I'm not that person. But I can be that person. I'm talking to children. I gotta calm down. Um, but For the most part, going back to the question, for the most part, I've had a lot of experience, a lot of positive experiences, even working with the men in my industry, even working with white men in my industry. Everybody is not, the corporate America is not necessarily everything that people say it is, but that's not to discount or dismiss experiences that other people have had for sure.
Awesome. And then her other question, this is great. She goes, I'm getting ready to go to college. So what would be the best way for me if I had a job to manage my money and have the best overall financial experience?
So the first and foremost, you want to make sure you have a budget. You need to understand how much money you're bringing in after taxes and after any benefits. If you get a job and they give you like 401k or retirement, health insurance, things like that, stuff like that that comes out of your paycheck, you need to know exactly how much money you're going to be making after all that comes out every paycheck. And then you should be figuring whatever your living expenses are. That's going to be if you're paying rent somewhere, your utilities, your Hulu subscription, your Disney subscription, your Netflix, everything that you pay. I always suggest, and I do this for myself every now and then when I feel like I need to redo my budget, take a month. You can start with a week, but even a month of every time you spend money, write it down. Because there's so many things that we don't budget for, but we just spend money on. Like sometimes you might not necessarily think about that time you go to Chick-fil-A or McDonald's or Starbucks or whatever, spend $3 here and $5 here, but that adds up, right? Especially if you're doing it multiple times a week or sometimes every day, me and my Chick-fil-A obsession. So you want to like be realistic about what you're spending your money on and then use that to create your budget, a realistic budget. So some people will just be like, oh, I'm only want to spend $100 a month on gas. And you can't spend $100 a month on gas if you're going 20 miles each way every day, 7 days a week. That's just not going to be realistic. So you want to create a realistic budget. And then sometimes you might say, well, you know what? Based on what I actually spend and I can't pull anything out of this, this is what I got and how much money I make, there's a gap. I need to fill that gap. So there's two ways that you can fill that gap. You can reduce your expenses or you can increase your income. So if you can't increase your income at the work that you're doing, like you can't pick up more hours to make more money, then that's where you start thinking about some kind of side hustle or something. But don't, you want to make sure that whatever expenses you have that you're budgeting for, like your essential, your core expenses are covered. And so sometimes that means you got to go out and find a way to make more money. But that's the starting point. Know exactly how much money you're coming out, you're bringing home after all of your taxes and your benefits or whatever are paid, exactly how much money that is, and then figure out exactly what you're spending money on. Find things that are in your budget. Like maybe you don't need to go to Chick-fil-A 2 times a day, 7 days a week. Maybe you can cut it down, just go on
Well, it can
breakfast.
only be 6 days. They're closed on Sunday, but
Oh,
still.
6 days. Yeah, you're right. You're right. So maybe you don't need to go 2 times a day, 6 days a week. Maybe you just do one time a day, 6 days a week, and then you can cut it down from there. So figure out ways that you can cut your expenses. But that's kind of the starting point. Know exactly how much money you make, exactly how much money you spend, and then make tweaks from there.
Love it. I love this question. This is Erin Gaines. She's in ninth grade. And she asked, what inspired you to pursue a career in finance?
Oh, this is actually a funny story. So my mom doesn't remember this, but it was a core memory for me. So when I was growing up, I always wanted to be famous, rich and famous. I wanted to be a singer slash actor slash reality TV show slash model slash whatever. Can I sing? No. Can I act? Probably not. Am I going to be anybody's model? I'm only 5'7", right? But that was my thing. I was going to be rich and I was going to be famous. And my mom was like, well, if you're going to be rich and famous, you should probably go to college for accounting so that you can know how to count your own money because sometimes those rich people, people steal their money because they don't know how to
Yeah.
count their money.
Yeah.
And I was like, cool, bet. Ever since I was a little kid, I was going to college so that I can know how to do accounting so that when I get rich and famous, I can count my own money. Even like going to college, I was like, I'm only going to college for accounting. So when I get rich and famous, I can count my own money. That was back in 2005, 20 years ago. I'm not either rich or famous, but I realized that my mom kind of set me up with like a fallback option. Like,
Yeah.
baby girl, I don't, you can do whatever you want to do. I'm here with you. But just in case this doesn't work out, let's find a practical solution. So that's that is honest to God, how I ended up going to school for accounting was
Wow.
because one day I was going to be rich and famous and I didn't want anybody stealing my money. I just
That's
ended up
awesome.
being good at it. So,
I got time for two more. I like this one. This is Jeremiah Williamson, one of our football players here at Velma Jackson. And he asked, was it a challenge to go so far away from home to college?
so okay, so I'm from Chicago, yes, originally. But my mom was in the military. So
Okay.
when I when I graduated from high school, I actually graduated from high school in Savannah, Georgia. So my
Okay.
mom was stationed at Savannah, Georgia, Honey Army Air Force when I graduated from high school. So I did go away for college, but I didn't go as far as from like Chicago to Atlanta. Um, it wasn't difficult for me because she was right down the street in Savannah. She was finishing up her last year in the military. And a lot of kids that I went to high school with also went to Georgia State. So I
That's a
always
huge
said
school.
it was really like the 13th grade because everywhere I looked, it was people I went to school with. So it wasn't really too much of an adjustment to go to Atlanta for school. And then when I felt like I needed to be at home with my mommy, I just went right down the street, 4 hour drive. The next year, though, she retired from the military and she went to work overseas as an independent, or not as a government contractor. So that was a little bit harder because she wasn't right down the street anymore. But the initial kind of moving away wasn't that bad.
Well, I think the biggest adjustment would be going to a school that big. I don't care who you are. It's very easy to get lost in the shuffle at a school as large as Georgia State. But
Yeah.
that's a
And it's
whole nother
different.
wormhole to go down.
Exactly. It's a little different because it's like downtown Atlanta. It's not like a closed campus like most schools are. So,
Yeah, it's a really cool campus. I've been there several times. I got one more. This is Cortez
okay.
Maxwell. He's in 11th grade, and he asked, "How do you stay updated on tax laws and regulations?"
Oh, that's a great question. The IRS actually requires the National Accounting Standards Board, NASBA. I can't remember the exact words, but the agency that licenses me as a CPA, as well as the United States Treasury or IRS for my enrolled agent license, requires us to get continuing education. So I have to have 80 years of CE for my or CPE for my CPA license every 2 years, and I have to have 72 hours of CE for my enrolled agent license every 3 years. So number one, I'm required to take classes to get updates. Part of that is, especially for the enrolled agent, is I have to do federal tax update every year to understand what the new laws are, because they change every year. But I go above and beyond because there's so much to know. I mentioned earlier, like in accounting, you can be a tax person, you can be a government accountant, you can be an auditor. Like, but even in tax, there's so many different disciplines. You can do corporate tax, you can do personal tax, you can do estate and gift tax, you can only do state tax, right? You can just only do federal tax. There's so many different areas, so there's so much to learn, and I love learning. I love knowing. Every time somebody asks a question, a tax question, if I don't know the answer, I go look it up. I have a subscription to a tax research a tax research software through my job, and I'm always in there trying to figure out every time I get a question, even if somebody asks me a question that I know the answer to, because tax law changes so drastically all the time. I'm always in there trying to figure out, make sure I have the most up-to-date information. So I love taxes. I'm probably one of the very few people in the world that would say I love taxes. I'm a tax nerd like that. And so I just love learning more information about the work that I do. And so I'm always, always, always in somebody's continuing education class, learning about something or reading something, reading articles or researching in the research software.
Awesome. Well, we're almost out of time, and we thank you so much for taking some time for us. But a couple things before we go. MillennialTaxExpert.com is your website. You got a lot of great resources on there. You've got a lot of great content. All of your social media handles are on there. And did I get that website right?
It's Millennial Taxpert. So it's like expert, but
Okay.
expert. So millennialtaxpert.com.
Millennialtaxpert.com. So yeah, definitely check it out. I've checked it out. It's really interesting. A lot of great things for young people on there to understand. You know, as you're about to start making money, you got a lot of great resources on there. You got a lot of cool videos. All your links are on there. But the last thing before we go, you know, like we said, kids can say this is never going to apply to me. This is boring. This is stupid. But like we said, and that I know it's a joke, but we say it all the time. The two things that guarantee in life are death and taxes. So why is it important to start getting familiar with how this is going to affect them right now?
Because it's always going to affect you, no matter how, even if you're wanting to be like, I want to know how I can pay $750 in tax on millions of dollars, like some certain person that we know. The only way that you can do that is knowing your tax situation and knowing how taxes apply to you. So, from the very first dollar that you make at your very first job to the money that you pass down to your heirs after you pass away, Uncle Sam's going to have his hand in it. So, it's important that you understand how not only it applies to you, but how we can get that number as low as possible. So you're not giving him too much.
I love it. Well, again, we thank you so much for joining us. Fit us in your busy schedule. My friend Kesha Jontae, the Millennial Taxpert, all the way from Chicago, Illinois. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks. Bye, y'all.
I talk to you soon.